بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أحمده وأصلي على رسول الكريم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه آمين يا رب. What I want to share with you today is the rock that is in Al-Aqsa, which I'm going to shortly show you, is not as popular as the rock, the black stone, Hajr al-Aswad, that is in Mecca. The shayateen, the forces of shayateen, have been trying to play with both of these rocks. And since I am hoping, inshallah, Allah allows me to explain to you what is in my mind, because it's kind of important, it is very, very important for Muslims to understand many of the issues that I'm going to bring up today. And inshallah, Allah will allow me to talk quickly and efficiently, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. Okay? See, let me explain it in words, and then I'm going to show it to you in the different websites. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started the former Muslim Ummah with Musa, and it ended with Isa. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took away their temple, their Kaaba, from them. And then they were told, as the Quran mentions, and I will show you this verse later on, but they were told, okay, now you just go, okay? You cannot come back to the city. Jerusalem is haram for you. Haramun ala qaryatin ahlaknaha annahum la yarji'un. You can't come back. This is known in history as the Jewish diaspora, okay? The Jewish diaspora. In fact, let me just show this to you. So the Jewish diaspora, which is mentioned in the Quran, the Jewish diaspora, if you can see here in Wikipedia, the Jewish diaspora, okay, is the dispersion of Israelites or Jews out of their ancestral homeland and their subsequent settlement in other parts of the globe. And then in paragraph number 3, a Jewish diaspora existed for several centuries before the fall of the Second Temple, and then again after the fall of the Second Temple. So there was the first temple, it fell, they built a new temple, and then that fell, and then after that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Uskunu fil ard, you just go about the world, you cannot come to your homeland until a certain appointed time. Okay, I'm just leaving it at that to that point right now, okay, because I want us to understand something very, very important. Okay, so now this situation where as the Quran mentions, let me show you the Quranic verse on this. So referring to the Jewish diaspora, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَقُلْنَا مِن بَعْدِهِ, after these events, after the fall of the Second Temple, وَقُلْنَا مِن بَعْدِهِ لِبَنِي إِسْرَائِيلِ, and we said to Bani Israel, Allah says, أُسْكُنُوا الْأَرْضِ, you live now on the earth, you can't come back. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ الْآخِرَةِ, except until the second promise. The second promise, which is mentioned, is given details in Surah Al-Kahf, which I'm not going to go into. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ الْآخِرَةِ لَجِعْنَاكُمْ لَفِيفًا, then we will bring you all back at that time when a certain promise is to be fulfilled. You'll be brought back to this land of Israel. Okay? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you will see this happen at a certain time where all the Jews will go back to Israel. Of course, this started with the Balfour Declaration, where now, for the first time in history, after many, many centuries, the Jews were able to go back. But really the main point that I wanted to raise here was that when the Jewish people were kicked out and Jerusalem was completely destroyed, okay, this is a very important point. Jerusalem was completely destroyed according to the Bible, and the Jerusalem was completely destroyed according to the Quran. The city of Jerusalem was completely destroyed according to historians. And so now, when you have a city in which everything has been destroyed, how are you going to then now when Jews come back, after Omar bin Khattab radiallahu anh allows them to, and they're looking for their city, they're looking for their temple, they're looking for where their stuff was in this city, and well, they don't know. don't have any proof. They really can't say. And I will go maybe into some detail about that. But Omar radiallahu anh, he mentions the Jewish site had become a dump yard. Okay, when Omar went and they surrendered to Omar, and Omar mentioned the Jewish site had become a dump yard. But anyway, this particular rabbi, who was one of the initiators of the idea of Kabbalah, okay, his name is Rabbi Ishaq Luria. Okay, Rabbi Ishaq Luria, he is the one who said, oh, the wall, the Wailing Wall, that is the temple. Okay, that has now led to this conflict where people think where Masjid al-Aqsa is, where the Dome of the Rock is, that area where the Wailing Wall is, that is where their temple needs to be built. And in order to build the temple, what needs to be done is we need to remove the masjid. Okay, and after we remove the masjid, we'll build our temple there. Okay, but when you do a thorough and a proper research, which I can't believe that, and there must be some politics involved and some magic involved, that they want that area, okay, listen to me, they want that area from where the Prophet went to the heavens, okay, because the jinns are dying to go to the heavens. The jinns are dying, the shayateen are dying to go to the heavens, because ever since the Quran came down, they can't go to the heavens. And now they want human beings to go to heavens, okay, and they're willing to do anything for that. Okay, يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. You can't now go. Okay, that's it. The shayateen have been stopped from going. And so now shayateen want human beings to go. This is one dimension. But the other dimension is that there is a place in Jerusalem, in Jerusalem in general, but a specific place where a prophet of Allah went, meaning Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm going to show you that, why this is significant. That rock on which the Prophet was, on which he tied his buraq, and from where he went to the ascension. Okay, they want access, the shayateen want access to this place, so they're telling the people the wrong, and these these Kabbalists, that after losing and the biggest tragedy is that even Muslims have fallen for this trick. Muslims also think, yeah, the Temple of Suleiman used to be here. That makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. Why? Because the Quran makes it very, very clear. Okay? Quran makes it very, very clear. Let me show you what the Quran says. Okay? Now, this is the second fall of the temple, after which they were not able to come back, and they, at that time, for very obvious reasons, as you'll see, didn't know where the temple was anymore. In ahsantum ahsantum li anfusikum. If you do good, you do good for yourself. Wa in asa'tum falaha. And if you do evil, it's on you. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ الْآخِرَةِ. When the second promise came, when you disobeyed Allah for the second time, لِيُسُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, so that your faces would be blackened, وَلَا يَدْخُلُوا الْمَسْجِدَ كَمَا دَخَلُوهُ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. And they entered into your masjid, into your temple. That was a Muslim place where they did ibadah to Allah. It was where Isa ﷺ taught. لا يدخلوا المسجد كما دخله أول مرة وليتبروا ما علوا تتبيرا. This is a very significant word, but I'm only going to talk about one aspect of it. And it was completely, utterly destroyed. So when you talk about 30,000 rocks that are on the Wailing Wall, that is not what the Quran is teaching. The actual temple had to be where there was a spring. You remember Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, where he was there with his palace, and the Queen Saba came, and she had to lift her clothes so she doesn't get wet. There is a natural water source known as the Gihan spring. The Bible is clear about this. Many other documents are very clear about this, that the temple of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam was actually about 1,000, you can say, feet from where is the Temple Mount today, okay, to the south. Now, I don't know why Muslims haven't considered this. وَلِيُتَبِّرُ مَا عَلَوْا تَتْبِيرًا. And I'm not the only one saying this. Okay? Even the Christians will, many of the Christians will tell you this. The same thing is mentioned in Mark chapter 13 verse 2. Jesus, peace be upon him, says, do you see these great buildings? He's talking about the temple and the buildings that are by the temple. Jesus replied, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. So where did you get the Wailing Wall from, if Jesus is correct? Where did you get the Wailing Wall from? And do you call that is where your temple is? No. The Wailing Wall was a fortress of the Romans, the same Roman army that had destroyed the temple. They had come with their army and had built a fortress there. And this is why the word alaw, ma'alaw tatbira, because the fortress was on top, where the masjid is today. And the temple of Suleiman was on the bottom. And they came from the top to the bottom. لِيُتَبِّرُ مَعَلَوْ تَتْبِيرًا. Okay? And over here, let me now show you some things. Okay, in April 70 CE, the time of the Passover, the Roman general Titus besieged Jerusalem. By 70 AD, the Romans had breached the final defenses and massacred much of the population and destroyed the second temple. Okay, there was no 30,000 bricks remaining. Okay, and so this is actually over here. I'll show you. This is kind of like the area. Let me quickly show you this. Okay, so let's see if I can show this to you. Okay, so this is kind of like what the temple was actually like. It was not on the mount, Temple Mount, where Masjid Aqsa is in the Dome of the Rock. This is actually south of that. And what you see there, the big wall, okay, the big wall, that is actually the fortress that is still there. Okay, and so let me now show you this picture so this becomes absolutely clear. And many Muslims should do research on this, okay, which is, the Bible even mentions it as a historical record, okay. The Temple Mount, the temple is in the city of David, okay, city of David. This is the place that Omar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu said that the Jewish place had become, what? Had become a dump site, okay. And this is the Gihan spring. There's no natural water, no spring, no underground water in the area of the on the Temple Mount itself. No. This is the fort of Anatolia. This is the western wall where the Jews worship, and they think this whole strip over here is theirs. No, it's all wrong. The real place where it was is over here. Umar bin Khattab did apparently take some of the some of the stones from here and bring them over here. But I want to show you something else. Okay, so the Gihan spring, the only source of water of the city. Okay, it comes from the east of the city of David. It is mentioned many times in the Bible. Its location in the valley east of the city. Okay, anointing to Suleiman. Okay, so this is where they actually were. So now let me share with you this. Okay, let's see if I can share with you this. This is the stone that they're after. This hole that you see here, okay, when you go into the Dome of the Rock, okay, you see it's round, right? Under the dome is this rock. Okay, under the dome is this rock. Okay, I'm going to try to show you maybe a better picture. This is where the Prophet landed with Burak, and he tied, you see where it says hole over here? This is where our Prophet tied what? Tied the Burak to this hole. Okay, this hole was made by the hand of Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, please understand something very, very important here. Okay, when an angel touched that stone, there's a certain power. Look, I'll give you an example. When the Samari made the golden cow, okay, when the Samari made the golden cow, and how did he make it? Right? He said, you know, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam asked him. Okay, everyone would worship the golden cow was put to death except for this one person. Innaka la misas. Innaka la misas. Okay, you cannot touch me till an appointed time. That's what Samiri said. Samiri was not put to death because he was working with the evil forces of Dajjal. I'm just going to leave it at that for today and go into details maybe at another time. But the only thing I wanted to say is فَنَبَزْتُهَا فَبَصَرْتُهَا أَثَرَ رَسُولٍ. He said, look, I saw the traces of the Rasul, meaning the angel, Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is in Surah Qasas and Surah Taha. Okay? فَنَبَزْتُهَا. And then I threw the dust from where the angel Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam I had put that into the golden cow, and then it all of a sudden became alive. So this is, Samiri was a magician, and he had the ability to see and to get things, right? And he put that into the golden cow, and then it started to talk. Okay? فَنَبَزْتُهَا and then, actually, you know what? Let me show you this part of the Quran so it's clear. Okay? But this is where Jibreel, what I'm saying is that just as Samiri had taken a piece of what? The footsteps of Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, here too you have Jibreel and Buraq, and they are actually after this. This is the real reason why they want the Dome of the Rock. Now just hold, okay? That those of you that are in more advanced level, I'm only going to point out this very quickly. فَأَخْرَجَ لَهُمْ إِجْلًا جَسَدًا. Jasad. Remember the word jasad? Also referring to Sulaiman, what he saw, that jasad on the chair. So this word jasad is there. So this connection that what Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam saw in his vision, that jasad. And Fir'aun is called jasad. And this is also called jasad. So just tie these three things together. But what I really want to mention here is, قال Musa alayhi salatu wasalam says to Samiri, قال فَمَا خَطُبُكَ يَا Samiri. Oh Samiri, what do you have to say about what you did? قال بَصَرْتُ. He said, I saw بِمَا لَمْ يَبْصُرُوا بِهِ. I saw what others couldn't see. Okay? فَقَبَضْتُ قَبْضَةً مِنْ أَثَرِ الرَّسُولِ. And so I took a little bit of that, okay? فَنَبَذْتُهَا. And then I put it and I threw it into the golden cow. كَذَلِكَ سَوَّلَتْ لِنَفْسِي. This is what something inside me. قَالَ فَاذْهَبْ فَإِنَّكَ فِي الْحَيَاةِ أَن تَكُونُ لَا مِسَاسٍ. He said, be gone. Even though all the others worshipped the cow, they were killed, he was told to go away. إِنَّكَ فِي الْحَيَاةِ أَن تَقُولَ لَا مِسَاسٍ فَإِنَّ لَكَ مَوْعِدًا لَن تُخْلَفْ. For you, there's an appointed time to be killed. By who? By Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, in the end. Over here, just so that there's no confusion, I'm not saying Samiri was Dajjal. I was saying he's working for Dajjal. Just like one of the people, I forget the name, Ibn Sayyad, who was in the time of the Prophet communicating with Dajjal and the shayateen. Okay? And the same way, this person, Samiri, was communicating with them and doing what they were saying. And were being, their nafs was being prompted by them. Okay? So, now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because when you understand why did the Jewish people start thinking of the Temple Mount as their main place rather than where it actually was, and that it was completely destroyed. Why do they want that area? They want that area because, for the same reason, they know this is where Jibreel was. And they know this is where Jibreel was, so the magicians are being prompted by the shayateen. This is the place where you have to build your temple. Okay? And so, let's look at this now. So you have this hole that was made by Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. So why they want to build their temple in this area? Because they want this rock. Why they're digging all over this area? Because they want traces of that angelic dust, you can say, that they want to use for their magic. Okay? They've tried to do this already with the Kaaba. Dajjal can't enter the Kaaba, but Dajjal has his people, his footstools, and I'm going to talk about the Kaaba and the black stone and what has happened with that too. But here is for you to understand that why, okay? So now let me just show you a few more things. So this is what they're interested in. This is the, the dome of the rock. This is the rock on the bottom. Now, what tradition tells us is what? Is that when Prophet Muhammad tied the Buraq there and Jibreel was there, then when he was going, this rock actually lifted up, okay, about 6 feet high, and is now part of, like you could say, would be from underground. Now it's like been raised up, sort of say, and is part of that, part of the crust, you can say. So now, here's another picture, right? And also, there is, and I don't know how strong these narrations are, but I've been to this place, and there's a place here just by the hole where the Prophet's footsteps are also there. Okay, so this is a very important place where this rock is there. This is the rock that went up. Okay. And it was touched by Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, it was touched by Buraq, and it was touched by Prophet Muhammad. So this is the reason that many magicians would be interested in this rock. So this is what happened. The Christians, they didn't like the Jews, right? So they made, when the Christians took over, the Byzantine Empire took over of Jerusalem, they made the whole Jewish area a dump, where the temple was. They destroyed it, they made it into a temple, and they made it into their dump. And Omar bin Khattab confirmed this in his narrations, okay, about him. So now, having said that, now let's read this. The Jewish authorities in Jerusalem did not at first accept the site of the Christian dump as having a Jewish significance. It was only after the Muslims decided to clean up the area that some Jews became interested in the place of the later Wailing Wall, which was actually the fortress. The temple was gone, okay, completely gone. But soon after the Ottoman invasion of Jerusalem, certain miraculous, according to the Jews, events occurred that gave confidence to the people of Jerusalem. And they're trying to make it look like everybody, but no, just the Jews, but then convinced the Christians and the Muslims that where your Dome of the Rock is, and let me make this very clear, that would be immoral. Because the Quran tells us not to drop the churches and the synagogues. And if there was already a synagogue there, then the Muslims had no right to build a masjid on that area. So this would be against the ethics. Omar radiallahu anh, in this same event of Jerusalem, he's there and he's in the church and he says, I'm not going to pray in the church because I don't want Muslims later on converting this church into a masjid later on. I don't want to do that. So he prayed outside. Okay? And he went actually to where the Temple Mount is and prayed over there. Okay? According to some of the narrations. The point being that when the Prophet is brought to need the prayer of all the prophets, it was not from the perspective that, okay, this was a Jewish place, now let's remove that and let's put an Islamic place here. No, because the Prophet, Allah wouldn't do this and the Prophet wouldn't do this. One of the proofs of that is the first verse of Surah Al-Isra. What is that? Subhanallazi asra bi abdihi layla min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa. It's called a masjid. And it's given a name that the farthest masjid, like this Mecca, is a masjid, that Masjid al-Aqsa is a masjid, and this is one way to understand the situation. But the point is that you'll see this from also historical records. It's very clear the temple was not there at all. Okay, so now in the year 1517, which is about 400 years ago or so, 500, almost 400 or 500 years ago, it was then believed that the area of the Dome of the Rock had the best credentials. Of course. What other place would they want other than the Dome of the Rock, where the Prophet and Jibreel and Buraq were together? Had the best credentials for being the place of the Holy of the Holies. So there was no way for them to know that. Other than what? Just a guess. I'll give you an example, okay? So that you kind of like understand this. Let's say I live in this city, okay? And this city has one really tall building, and then my family lives here, and then we leave, okay? When I leave, after I die, a few generations go by, and they removed that big, tall building, but I told my great-great-grandchildren, I passed it on, that there's this big, white, tall building, right? and that's the one that it is. Now, when my family comes back to this town, and they're going to look for something, you know, that's like from what they were hearing, a place of worship and so on and so forth. They say, oh, okay, maybe this is it, even though that had been removed. Okay, so the same thing here, except it goes further. You can see the work of the shayateen taking place here. Okay, so what is that? So in the year 1517, it was believed that the area of the Dome of the Rock had the best credential. Relates, it is said, during the Feast of the Tabernacles in the 1519, the crescent on top of the Dome of the Rock turned eastwards. Okay, first of all, the crescent itself was a problem during the Ottoman Empire. That itself as a symbol was a problem, but it turned eastwards. The symbol of the crescent and the moon is a symbol of magic. It's not a symbol of Islam. I'm not going to go into that today. Okay, but the Arabs believed this to be a preposterous omen, or sorry, portentous omen. They attempted to turn it southward in the direction of the Kaaba. Okay, the crescent's normal position was towards the south, with its horn pointing towards the west. The Muslims interpreted this eastward positioning of the crescent to signal the coming of the Messiah. After the restoration of the crescent on the dome, another similar event occurred 3 years later. Again, Vinley states, Rabbi Moses Basola, who visited the Holy Land in 1522, in the time of the Turks, reported that the rumor concerning crescent is that an overturned crescent facing south, it was bent toward the south, protrudes from a big column of metal at the head of the dome, which is, okay, so anyway, so then they said, well, this supernatural event has happened. This is where the Temple Mount is. This is the one of the major events. Then I'll mention others are like Rabbi Isaac Nuri. Okay, he is the founder of Kabbalah, one of the founders of Kabbalah. He also said this is the location, even though they had no proof. Another, I'll come back to this, but I just want to mention the itinerary of Benjamin Tudela, also, who has many mistakes in his book, but basically says, yes, the wall that was the fort of the Romans, that is where where the Muslims have their masjids, the Dome of the Rock and Masjid Aqsa and Masjid Qibla and that whole area, that's the Haram Sharif. This book says, well, that's where the Dome of the Rock is. Well, of course, if you're masjid, if you're a Christian, right, and you want Jesus to come back, well, you're going to say, well, we need to build we need the Jews to build the temple, so Jesus will come back, and the Jesus will say, yes, we need to build our temple, and Muslims must be bad anyway, because why else would God tell us to remove their mosque and then build our temple there? Okay, and so there have been plans to destroy the mosque. I'm not going to go into that today, but the point is that you can see that magic is involved here, Kabbalah is involved here, and these rabbis that are that have these magical, you can say, some shayateen are telling them to take this place, just like with Samiri when he saw Jibrail's traces of Jibrail ﷺ, and used that for making the golden cow do, you know, strange things. So they now also want this area because they can do the same thing, and this is what the shayateen want. So they want to access to the heavens. So this is a portal. Remember, this is the same general area from where Isa ﷺ will come down. It's known as Sham. This is also the same type of area or similar place to the area where Isa ﷺ went up. And so did the Prophet. The Prophet was taken up from here. Now, just quickly, I forgot to mention this, that I talked about how in the Bible it said no stone would be left. I also talked about in the Quran how it said everything would be destroyed. But the most important historian of that time, his name was Josephus, and he writes these different things in his different books. But I'll just read one of them to you. The Romans, though it was a terrible struggle to collect the timber, raised their platforms in 21 days, having, as described before, stripped the whole area in a circle around the town to a distance of 10 miles. The countryside, like the city, was a pitiful sight. For once there had been a lovely vista of woods and parks. There was nothing but desert, stumps of trees. No one, not even a foreigner, who had seen the old Judea and the glorious suburbs of the city, now set their eyes on her present desolate. Who could have helped sighing and groaning at so terrible a change? For every trace of beauty had been blotted out by war. This is a Jewish writer. Josephus is a Roman Jew, and he is writing this about what has happened. He's one of those Jews who had kind of like become Romanized, and nobody had known it in the past, and it came upon it suddenly, would have been recognized, that place, meaning it changed so much no one recognized it, and he was already there. He would still have been looking for the city, meaning it was so removed that you'd go into the city and you wouldn't even know this is the city. So how are you going to, like, this is like when the event happened, when the second fall of the temple happened. This was the situation, and Josephus continues writing these different things. Okay, so devotedly was disappearing before their eyes. I mean, and he talks about this in detail. Okay, and so this is about 70 AD. Now, the point being that if something was unrecognizable as its former city when it has been just newly destroyed, imagine centuries and millennials after. And how are they going to know? Well, they just went and they listened to the shayateen and they said this is where it is. And now the whole world can erupt into a war because they're listening to these shayateen. You see, this is a big deal. And so, now they have to, do what they got to do, blow up the Dome of the Rock, Israel's chief rabbi's plea in 1967. Because that's what they've been told to believe. Okay? And so, so now, if you see the black stone, right? The black stone, okay, let me also mention here, they want, because Islam has the haqq, so they want the dust from Al-Aqsa Masjid. They want the black stone, which is from Jannah. And they want the Rawda, the dust of the Rawda, the soil of the Rawda. I'm not going to talk about the Rawda today and the dust of the grave of the Prophet, but this is part of Jannah, right? That area is Rawda, and that is part of Jannah. And so they want these special places and the dust from these special places to do their Kabbalah and their magic and what not. And so, it'll be Kharabul Medina. They have to bring Medina down. And even though Dajjal can't enter Medina, but they will get their cronies and people from Medina to leave Medina. And I'm not going to talk about that right now. But I'm only going to say that they have already tried many, many times to take parts of the black stone. They have tried to defile, people have tried to defile the black stone. As soon as, within 150 years after the Prophet passing away, the black stone was already beginning to break. And then later on it was, I forget the name of the group, but later on they were taken into all those areas where there's magic in Babylonia, in Iraq, Iran, that area. And then the stone that has a connection to the hearts of the Muslims, a lot of these fragments are missing. And Allah knows where these are. Maybe they're in the hands of the wrong people. And they're affecting, there's magic on the ummah today because of these reasons. And and so let me now show you. So now we have fragments that have been pasted together. And basically, recently they took a very close-up picture of the black stone. And you'll see that, let's see if I can get it. You'll see it becomes red before it becomes black. So this is the close-up. It's actually red and black right now. Okay, when you do a close-up, it's black as you move out. Now this is the most analyzed picture of the black stone. Okay, so you see it's like graphite, and it's been, the different parts of the black stone have been pasted together, but majority of it is missing. Okay. So what they have already access to some of the black stones, it seems. they already have access to the soil in the grave of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. Okay, this is what's been pasted together. These are different pieces that have been pasted together. And so there are some amongst the magicians that have access to these, because this is what they go after all the time. And the proof of that is simply the Quran mentioning what Samiri did. As soon as he had an opportunity, he was able to get it, and he used it to do his magic. And now Dajjal is, and this is always, Dajjal has been behind this always. And so now, as Mecca falls, as Medina falls, as Jerusalem falls, this will give them an opportunity to get the things to create fitna. So now what did Samiri do? He put it in the golden calf, and everyone started to worship the calf, right? So this is the type of fitna, okay, that we're talking about. That you just left a land believing in one Allah, and Allah just saved you, and now you're worshipping a cow. So that's the type of magic this is. So Al-Jawaini says the stone was returned after 23 years. This is the black stone. In 1952, the Karmatians held the black stone for ransom and forced the Abbasids to pay a huge sum for its return. Okay, it was wrapped in a sack and thrown into the Friday Mosque of Kufa. So this is the area, the same area where, you know, Babylon was, and the magic and all of that. Okay, so it looks like graphite, the black stone, the Hajar al-Aswad, because of the paste that's been used to put it together. That's one of the reasons. Okay, so just to be clear, this is the city of David, and the north of that is where the Temple Mount is, and the Masjid al-Aqsa and these areas are. If today Jews accepted the proper place of their temple, which is the city of the David, which I will talk about in more detail at another time, the whole conflict would be over. The whole conflict would be over. The whole Middle East conflict would be over. Go make your temple where it's supposed to be, and let us leave the Masjid al-Aqsa where it is supposed to be. But no, that is not the intent here. See, there's a different intent. And it's not that, you know, I'm smarter than them. They're 10 times smarter than me. So here's now where the temple was, okay? And over here you have the spring. This is also probably where Sabah saw the water, okay? In this temple area where his palace was. And there's no spring on top, okay? The spring is from here. And if you know anything about Jewish religion, they really need water for everything. They need water for their sacrifices. They need water for their, you know, the women, they need their water. They need water for their wudu. They used to go deep into the water, and they still do this in many of the synagogues today. So they did all this. So the last thing I want to say is that, of course, I have many exciting topics that I want to talk about. Please do support me. Look at the comment section if you feel like, and if you can, if Allah gave you the funds, definitely support the projects that I'm trying to do. And at the same time, do dua for me, inshallah, that Allah increases my understanding to see the haqq. Allahumma arina al-ashya kama hiya. And also share this with others so that the awareness grows. Because if Muslims just became aware of this one fact, that the Temple Mount is not where their Jewish site is supposed to be, if you just become clear on that one point, and that this is exactly what the Quran says, historians like Josephus say this, the Bible also says this. If Muslims became clear of this one issue and brought it up and made it major research, it would be a big, big thing. So anyway, read the comment section, please subscribe and support and share. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.